The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the podcast belong solely to the hosts and not the host's past, present, or future employers. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Brian, Ms. Berlin, and Mr. Betcher for Breaking Down Security.
Hello.
Yay.
Yes, we are back at full strength. Last couple weeks have been, people doing awesome things. Miss Berlin, out doing conferences.
Well, I mean, I think one of the ones that I missed wasn't super. I mean, it was just like 5th grade math homework.
Well,
and I was doing it until 10:30 at night.
It is important, somebody,
Super.
One of these days he'll look back and he'd be like, I remember my mama staying up with me till, 10:30 at night, helping me do my homework. And, now I'm a Nobel Peace Prize winner in math or something. Oh, wow.
Love my kid, but I don't know.
Well, he'll remember the trip on the boat in the lake and stuff.
Yes,
hopefully that'll be
sure.
better. That'll be better. Yeah. It was like 80 degrees there in Ohio this weekend, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't super hot. When we were on the boat, it was about 65 and sunny. So it was like we're wearing sweatshirts and stuff, but there was nobody out, which was great.
Okay. Well, yeah, because 65 on the lake's probably below cool. So
yeah, I'm cool with that though.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. Mr. Betcher, how you doing? How you doing, sir?
Good.
Awesome. Yeah, I have done nothing pretty much the last week in terms of security.
It's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
You don't have to eat, sleep, and breathe it, even though sometimes we think we do.
Yeah, I upgraded my laptop to Windows 11 beta, which is nice. It's super stable. So far, nothing's crashed, which is always nice for a Windows beta. I've started playing RetroArch again. I played in this game, a little known game called Final Fantasy VII. I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but and trying to get back to my ROMs and playing like Mario Brothers and Mario 3 and all that. So it's fun. It, kind of lets me relax and do something a little different when I'm not, working on things. So cool. Well, we have an interview this week. And again, this is yet another person that has been on my bucket list for a long time. I'm glad that she was able to join us. And we're going to be doing an interview this week and next week, which is great because next week, the week of October 1st, I'm going to be in San Diego. So just visiting a friend. So nothing security related or conference related, but I'd like to welcome Kalila Scott. I said that right. I remember that from when she told me, I think.
Yes.
5 minutes ago.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent.
Appreciate that. So Kalila, could you maybe tell us a little bit about, your backstory, your origin story, and how you got to be in security?
A little bit about that transition. I've always been into tech. I'm a gamer, Final Fantasy as well, Resident Evil. I'm the Resident Evil queen.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, it was always one of those things I was interested in. And so I decided like a few years back to go back to college and learn more about tech because I'm more used to the structured learning. Plus I wasn't even aware of all the resources that were out here when I started that journey. So yeah, I ended up taking up the information security and assurance track for my major. Which I'm still in. I'm scheduled to graduate in February, so I'm so ready. I'm so ready. But yeah, I'm
excellent. Me too.
Purdue University Global, which is completely online. It's pretty cool. A little bit about just my tech experience. I've done like some help desk, some Windows 10 refreshes at a few like hospitals and things of that nature. They kind of waited till the last minute last year to switch over from 7 and 8 to 10. So yeah, I was definitely a part of a few projects that was in the mix of that. So that was cool. Fast forwarding to, again, last year around this time, I created the Tech Sec Chicks, which is a women's organization that I'm trying to move to make into a nonprofit, later on in the future. But it's geared towards helping women and allies transition into tech, just have a support system, a safe space to be able to just support one another. We provide like resources, some are free, some are paid, but we definitely have like a cyber sisterhood thing going on. I recently just accepted a role. I actually start tomorrow morning with a company for a security compliance analyst. This is my first role, INfosec role, GRC, everything. So I'm pretty fresh at it, but I'm pretty excited to see what I can learn on the job and just gain some really good experience. So I'm happy that I've made it this far.
Very nice. Very nice. So you'd meant, so I know we're getting a little off of what our original topic is, but you'd mentioned working with some hospitals to get upgraded from 7 to 8 to 10. Was there, because I've seen this before. It's like, you've got developers and they're like, oh yeah, we're using Java 1.4, we're going to upgrade to Java 1.6 because it's like the next major version or whatever. And I'm like, we're already on like Java 1.15. Why aren't you not upgrading to 1.15? They're like, oh, that's a huge issue. Was there any thought about, what made them go to 10 versus like waiting until like 11? Was it just they had the money now to do so? Because, is there now a plan in place once, they've implemented 10 to get to 11 or to get to whatever is beyond that?
I believe the change for most of them was because they were not, Microsoft was not going to continue to support 7 and 8. I believe that was the issue. And so because that was going to be out of compliance, they were going to get charged for every system that they had that was still running that software. So it became, the chicken with the head cut off show all year long, every project I went to, because they waited till the last minute to convert these systems over, as opposed to having a plan a year ahead and doing things in steps. They could have done things, every 3 months. Okay, we're going to do this section, and then we'll move on to this. Like it was crazy, because they were, I forgot what they were using to implement the upgrades, but it had a lot of issues where we would have to go back and do remediation, figure out why the updates weren't taken on certain devices. And we had to manually go around and do this. So that was exciting.
Yeah.
But you know what? For me, again, it was a good learning experience. And it was, I was taking what I could get to get my foot in the door with this whole tech thing. And it's actually paid off in a major way, because with those jobs and those projects that I did, with the help desk job that I did, along with, I forgot to mention I just finished an internship like over a month ago with Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and it was a cybersecurity internship. And half of it, I worked with the GRC team. I got to work with like RSA Archer, just watching them implement, that tool and the hiccups that can go along with the back end of things. So that was really interesting. And it kind of, what happened during that internship is I was already thinking about GRC being the right move for me. That just kind of sealed the deal. So I'm very humble to have been able to be chosen for that internship, because it gave me what I needed to see and move me in the right direction to start, learning about NIST standards and ISO standards and SOX. And, I had already knew certain things about it, but just not as in depth as I was trying to go. Studying for the Security Plus. I just passed the Security Plus this January. Thank you. When I say I've been so busy this year,
that's a lot in 1 year.
Yeah, so I'm doing school, I'm working, going from working to an internship now, this new position starting tomorrow. And I want to say this will be the third show I've been on this month, and I have one more tomorrow. And for the year, I think this is probably like my 14th show, 13th or 14th. So I've been doing a lot of talking for someone, I think, and I hate to take over the show, but I think more so for me, I started this year with the mindset that I was going to get out of my comfort zone. I didn't like speaking in front of people online. It was just one of those things that I just wasn't comfortable with doing. And so I pushed myself this year, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go from doing 0 shows and I'm gonna do all of them.
Awesome.
Yeah. It gets easier as you go along.
Absolutely.
I mean, just like with all of the other stuff,
Yep.
Absolutely.
So what are so for those folks that are listening to this and like, hey, I want to hear her on other shows, what other shows were you on?
Ooh, INfosec.
We don't mind cross promotion, so yeah.
I know. Let me think of the list. So INfosec Unplugged with Davin Jackson, the Security Happy Hour with the Cybersecurity Warriors. I've been on Eric's cyberpoppa show. I spoke at the DC Cyber Warriors. I did a presentation for them. It was called me and a friend of mine. It's called I Passed the Security Plus, Now What? And apparently I figured it out.
Yeah, right. I think.
Nice.
But yeah, I actually did the Keep It Techie show I want to say 2 weeks ago. But yeah, my brain is frozen right now, but it's been so many shows. And then I also do like maybe once a month, or every other month, I co-host a show with John Breath. He's a friend of mine. So he has the Cyber Insight show where we kind of go through and troubleshoot some of the Try Hack Me rooms live. That way people can follow along with us. They can ask questions about certain things and we can interact with them during the show. So I've done 3 of those so far with him.
Very nice. Okay. I will make sure that I add those. All right. So for those of you who are like, well, why are we here? This GRC stuff is why we're here. And it's an excellent segue to talk about the GRC related items, because Ms. Berlin's worked in a hospital on the blue team quite a bit. You did the internship. I've done auditing and compliance preparation for several healthcare systems back in the day, back when high trust and meaningful use were brand new things. And they were still trying to figure out how to feel their way along with that. You've worked with hospitals on GRC. What does that entail? And you mentioned RSA Archer, which they're not a sponsor of the show, and I've had to deal with them from a demo side of the coin there. What is the impetus to have GRC tools or tooling or people in a healthcare system for? I found that compliance was kind of a secondary thing for some of the hospitals that I worked for. So, what was the culture like there for GRC for a hospital system?
Now I can only speak towards the internship as far as GRC is concerned. Because the other ones, like I say, they were like Windows 10 refresh. So we were kind of on the ground floor of things. But yeah, so as far as the internship, they had a nice solid team. By the time that I got there, they had a nice solid team, but everybody was, still kind of fresh with everything, maybe 3-4 years in the mix. But they seemed to be really solid. They seemed to know where they wanted to go with things. Without me getting into detail. But yeah, they seem to have a plan of where they wanted to go, how important GRC was to the organization, and different ways to implement these tools or systems, security policies, and baseline. They seem to have it all together. And not to say, they didn't have their weak spots or opportunities. But from my perspective, they were a little more ahead than anybody else that I've seen thus far.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So some of the discussions, and you can check out, I put links to things, because I was just thinking of some topics of discussion that we can go through. So one of the big questions that I had, and I mentioned some of this before we started the show. I used to work at an organization that was starting to get to the point where they needed to have one of these to be able to track issues, or the company was starting to become more mature, and they wanted to be able to measure things or to keep track of various items. And the big question is, why do we need a GRC tool? And I guess what GRC stands for is like governance, regulatory, compliance. So that's mostly I've heard it being used for compliance, not necessarily government or governance and regulatory, but I guess that there's a good need, other than just needing it to track HIPAA and high tech and PCI type requirements. What when you were involved with using that at that org, what were some of the things that you had to measure, or what were some of the things that you had to work with in regards to that?
So like, again, the tool that they were using, and I got to watch a lot, because after that whole SolarWinds things, interns don't touch that.
Oh, that's not right.
Oh no.
No. I mean, but again, it was very informative, because I got the gist of what the tool was doing or what it could do. Again, it's like a risk register. Different tools like that. It gives you a centralized location for your documentation, number one, which is good, because it can help you monitor and audit when those, are coming up again, because you have to do like yearly audits of those security policies, standards, and baselines. It helps out with that. It'll send you alerts. And I think that's really helpful, because trying to manage that completely on your own or individually, that can be a lot of work. So again, it was great experience for me, because I got to go through some of the security standards and policies, make sure, all the dates were correct, the information was correct anything that wasn't in there. And I got to watch them upload it into Archer, which was really cool, because then I can go back in there and be like, wow, I helped put that information in there. And now I can easily go back and look up anything and find it a lot quicker. This is great when you're having high trust audits and different, different audits, external audits. You can upload the evidence that you need really quickly for that audit. It's just very easy to find, instead of going through 6 million Excel sheets. I'm not sure what this thing is in GRC with these Excel sheets, but it's a thing.
That's how I thought everybody kept track of it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I saw that and I was like, what? That's fine.
Okay, so you get an auditor that it's coming, and can you just say, oh, here's a login to our GRC tool, just have at it?
I don't think that's a good idea.
I don't think that is possible. I think it's a way to maybe submit that information to them securely. But I don't think that would be feasible to give every auditor of every external company access to that tool. It's just not.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about maybe other companies, but some auditors, like PCI auditor, they can basically have anything that they ask for, and you have to give it to them.
Well, now that's interesting, because one thing that I did see when they were using Archer, you can set permissions. So if you have a PCI auditor that needs to gain access to specific evidence, they only had a certain amount of access. It stops you at some point. So if you're in AppSec and you're looking up something you're not supposed to, trying to look up something you shouldn't be able to access or really don't need access to, it'll stop you.
Yeah. Mr. Betcher, you and I remember having to go through some PCI audits. We didn't have I don't think we had a GRC tool at the time. I think we were using spreadsheets as well, which my friend, Wendy Knox Everett, she was talking about how INfosec runs on spreadsheets, and it all comes down to spreadsheets. For some reason, I no matter where we go, I've seen, $1 billion or projects run on spreadsheets. It all comes down to spreadsheets because for whatever reason, a CSV file is one of the most easiest ways of transferring data portability wise between systems. It's interesting. No matter where you go, it all boils down to just having a bunch of spreadsheets sometimes in that respect. So the risk register. What was that?
I said it's painful.
Well, yes, and if you can figure out how to make a good pivot table, you can rule the world. Your management material at that point. So I want to go back to something you had mentioned, risk register, and for those of us who work in INfosec on more of a blue team or an offensive side, a GRC tool for those of us, it's more of an organizational thing. It's not a tactical thing. It's not something you would necessarily talk about day-to-day risks like, this. And actually, in some cases, you may, depending on what you're actually wanting to measure in the GRC tool. But for the most part, it's overarching risks to the organization. It may be, instead of mentioning specific threat actors, you may be like, well, our overarching risks is ransomware, generically in terms of ransomware. The risk register also would tell you things like, the likelihood or consequences of a specific risk occurring. And it may not be ransomware, it may be tornadoes or human-related factors like, insider threats or something like that. You might also have specific playbooks for incident responses if those risks become a thing, which Ms. Berlin and Mr. Betcher and I have talked about recently about playbooks. And also who's responsible for managing those risks. It may be an IT PM, it may be a legal person, it may be somebody from finance, it may be Kalila, who's going to be managing some GRC stuff at her new job. She may be responsible for risk reduction or risk mitigation or risk transference, or and that's where we get into the whole transferring, mitigating, canceling, or just accepting those risks. And that's part of the overarching risk management structure, not necessarily, you have these patches. And so, if you may think, oh, well, this doesn't really affect me. I think everybody's affected once you get to the point where you're starting to have a GRC tool, because you have to start measuring the effectiveness of your programs, the effectiveness of your risk management processes. If you're mature enough to actually start having to measure these things or to keep track of these things, you're doing one of two things. You're either trying to show how your security and your different departments are making money, and figuring out a better way to handle things, or like it was with the startup I was working at, you're trying to go public, so you have to start keeping track of SEC requirements, or companies want to know if you're SOC compliant, so you're going to see, oh, well, we're missing these 10 things to be compliant with SOC, SOC, or SOX in this case, SOX. So that, there's a lot to be done there. So it can go down to the minutia, but it can also be like an organizational or a business type goal thing. It does tend to impact a lot of folks.
Definitely.
Let's see. So, I think so. We've got an article here about from CIO Magazine about what is a GRC and why would you need it. A lot of these links we're going to have in our show notes this week are what the kind of stuff that your boss's boss would be looking at, or talking about blockchain or whatever. But this was a pretty decent article from Kim Lindros from 2017 about GRC and why you need it.
I kind of wonder if people end up seeing GRC, like you've seen articles like this around everything InfoSec related, right? Like, what is a pen test and why do I need it? Or what is, this kind of automation and why do I need it? I feel like GRC might be one of those things too. Like, oh, I need to be compliant on something other than HIPAA.
Right. Well, for Ms. Berlin, like yourself at Blumira, which company has been sponsored our podcast in the last few months, you're taking customers, for instance, and your customers want to know certain things. Mm-hmm. And, like Mr. Betcher mentioned with the auditor thing, vendor spreadsheets or vendor questionnaires that come in are going to ask specific questions about, are you SOC compliant? Are you compliant with X? Do you look at your logs? Do you do X, Y, and Z? The GRC tool may hold those artifacts so that it's easier for you to do turnaround on your vendor questionnaires. So, if you have a GRC system and you can just, click, tar this up and then email it off. One, you've saved a ton of time for not having to hunt these things up every time, and they can be updated on a semi-regular basis. The quicker the turnaround, the more likely that company would be like, oh, well, your company's really put together. We're going to go ahead and do business with you. Versus, well, it take you 2.5 weeks just to get back to us on a half a dozen documents. What does that really mean? Did you have those, or whatever? So it can actually go towards the maturity of an organization in a lot of respects. So. Let me see. So let me see, what are our business? Okay. So, Kalila, when we're talking about GRC tools, what are some of the things that we should be thinking about when we're implementing these things? Is there you said you're going to be starting a new job on Monday. What does that look like for you? Are you going to be managing the GRC system or working in the compliance department or the audit department? What does that look like for you?
Definitely in the compliance department. And as far as the GRC tool goes, where I'm going, they don't have one right now. Yeah. So again, it's good that I'm taking this ServiceNow GRC course, because again, it gives me a generalized idea of what all I can really do. Like, again, I got to watch some things with the Archer thing in my internship, but this is more hands-on. So the course that I'm taking is on Udemy, just like one of those $15 courses, which goes through it, the tool and how to set it up and what to download to get, and you can actually download like mock information and data in there, mock standards and policies, so you can kind of play around with it. I'm still working on that. But again, it's pretty interesting because I figured out that you can spawn up an instance in ServiceNow GRC, like a developer's instance, and for free. Now it's only for 10 days. However, if you interact with it within those 10 days, they'll keep it going for you unless they need it back. But if you go 10 days without touching it, they take it back from you automatically. But again, most people don't even know you can play around with ServiceNow from an asset management perspective, from a dev's perspective. So again, that's one of those things that I found on my own and have been doing, because I know sooner or later, which I'm not sure if I'm coming in the door doing anything like that, but I would love to be a part or head a project where I help to implement a GRC tool within the organization. I think that's something that I bring to the table, just having that little bit of knowledge that I have, and then I'm still learning while I'm going as well. I think it's gonna be very beneficial to myself and to the company. So yeah, it's definitely going to be different. I can't speak a whole lot on the position itself because I haven't started yet, so I don't know how things are going to look in that setting. But I'm definitely staying positive, and I'm just really ready because I know that it's going to be a lot of learning on my end. Which is really what is exciting me at this moment. So.
Right. So you said you used Archer at the other, or you were working with the team who was working with the Archer GRC, and you've looked at ServiceNow. They're, they're not sponsors or anything, but and they're really complex and somewhat convoluted in my opinion. But what were some of the differences that you noticed between those systems? And the ServiceNow one on Udemy, were there other GRC tools, like courses on Udemy for other GRC tools, or
there are? I haven't looked at any other ones, but I believe there are. I started with that one because again, it's pretty popular. A lot of companies are using it nowadays. And again, it would be good to have some hands-on, just from a lab experience on my end. But again, we could be using any tool in the future, but I think the basics of it is kind of the same. Again, that centralized location to, store your security policy standards, evidence, risk register, things of that nature. And again, I don't know how to do that yet. It hasn't got to it hasn't broken down yet in the course, but it's very interesting to see. I think ServiceNow is, I won't say easier to navigate. I worked with it a little bit when I did like an asset management Windows 10 project. Like I was the asset coordinator. So we used it to, just handle some of the data that we were getting day to day for the machines, for the assets. So I was a little bit familiar, which is why I feel like it may be an easier transition, because I do know what that interface looks like and how to maneuver through it a little bit. Archer, to me, it seemed more put together, if that makes any sense. Like it seemed way more advanced than ServiceNow. It just, I don't know, it just seemed like it was a lot of things that you can kind of click and drop, which is really easy. The interface just seems like, I don't know, like it's just more manageable. So the ServiceNow, you kind of got to go about things in a roundabout way, depending on what you're doing. So I think that could definitely use a little bit of work. But then again, like I say, maybe I haven't gotten to the section where they give us the tips and tricks, and so I don't want to downplay their software, because I think it's still good and it's still useful.
Yeah, I guess I never realized that they did any that you could track any GRC stuff in there. Like that's pretty interesting. I bet you'll probably find a lot of things that you're going to be importing from spreadsheets. But in the end, it'll be better, right? Like way easier to track and better for everyone overall.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you'd mentioned the Udemy course. I didn't know if you'd been told by your new incoming org that was, what was settled on, because I do remember it being very political at the job where I was helping my friend Casey implement these things. Because one, it was you had to pretty much go and talk to everybody and find out what they wanted. And the problem was, and we see this with in the security industry, you get these companies that come in like, the IBMs or whatever, and they're IBM, and they've got these huge network management systems, or these huge, and not just IBM, but like these huge systems, and they come in and they're all slick and they're like, oh yeah, you don't know what you want. We know what you want. We know what you need. Or, you've got these organizations that don't go in and actually, do like a requirements doc. GRC, like we have in our sheet here, is going to affect everybody in your organization: IT, finance, INfosec, compliance, HR, legal, asset management. So you're the IT folks. I totally did not catch the asset management stuff, but yeah, asset management is going to be a thing. I'm definitely going to add that to the list. But I mean, every one of these departments is going to use this in some way, shape, or form, especially if they're being touched by compliance in some way. And the one thing you mentioned about, the interface looks slick. There are a lot of UI issues with a lot of GRC tools where, we're still using Flash, or, we're using Java or whatever. And it's like, we can't use Flash anymore. And like, oh, well, we'll give you the HTML5 version, but it's going to cost you. Or, we had that problem where it was like, oh, you can only use Internet Explorer. And this just tells you how long ago this was. It doesn't work with Firefox, or it doesn't work with, Chrome or whatever. There are some GRC tools that are better for some industries versus others. So in the healthcare industry, Archer's probably better for healthcare, or, if you're, an endpoint security company or a log correlation company, there's only about 500 of these tools out there. So you're going to have to do a lot of demos to find out which one works for not only you, but your organization. And you're going to have people like, oh yeah, when I was at, Umpty Squat, Dewey, Cheatham and Howe, we used, Joe Bob Billy's GRC tool, and it was awesome. We're definitely going to get that one because I know a guy there. And I was like, oh, just get the fuck out of my way. And it's going to be like that. And it's going to be like, you have to get requirements from everybody to understand exactly what it is they're doing. And what you're going to find is no one GRC tool is going to work. Somebody's going to get asked out. And in a lot of cases, when I was working with some of the GRC tools, vulnerability management was definitely not on that list. So they were like, well, we can shoehorn things in, or, we can modify, the UI, or give you custom fields or whatever. And you're looking at additional cost from, customizing the UI costs additional monies and, whatever. So, which is, it kind of brings me back to this standard Fusion doc. They were like things to look out for GRC stuff, centralized controls, dashboarding, which is great because management loves them some dashboards or some spider diagrams that show gap analysis. If you can show gap analysis, how effective your existing controls are versus where you need to be or whatever. Future, it says support for future standards. I didn't exactly understand what they meant by that. It's like, how can you view the future? But I guess if you're really plugged into that industry, you would know, if there's things coming up for that.
Like updates to the tool and stuff though, too. Right.
Oh,
right.
Yeah. But I was thinking, what I was thinking of was maybe like ISO standards. Like if you're going from ISO 27000 like 2013 versus 2018, or PCI version, I don't know what the hell version are up to, 12 right. or something like that. What does that look like? And does, what kind of support contract and education that the company is going to give your teams, because everybody's going to be they may have their own different views or different training, or they may use the GRC tool differently than other groups. So I'm just thinking of that. You are going to be going to an exciting place. If they don't have one yet. It may all still be spreadsheets, which is actually a good thing because you can put that data in somewhere. But if you have one, it's one of those things where once you have it, you're stuck. At least as far as my experience has been, you can't just rip something like that and start over. Because data portability is definitely a thing that that they have issues with. So. Yeah.
Wait, Brian, you are.
Yeah. So it gets converted to a CSV, right? Like Brian loves so much. And then
not always
it's imported into your new tool, right?
No, not always. Some GRC tools won't take importation like that, or the GRC tool requires you to have one of their technicians do it for you, or there's integrations that they have that costs extra. Like, oh well, we want our risk register from our Jira to integrate to our GRC tool. Well, we don't have a Jira connector, but we can make one for you for $500 an hour.
Yeah,
I mean, there's definitely some nickel and diming on these things. I'm not saying it's predatory, but it's like every person, they create a cookie cutter, solution. And then you have to, add the little bits onto the tool.
Yeah. Sometimes they have to do that though, because their tool is so complicated. It takes one of their developers essentially to customize it for each company.
Right. Yeah. Let me see. What were some of the other things that came up? It says scalability. So when it says it should be able to grow with your organization. Integrating tools like Jira and your Slack become key features to increase functionality of platforms. API access to future integrations of third-party tools will become more valuable as companies grow. 100%. I guess how big is the organization you're going to be going to?
It's global. It's a global healthcare company.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? I would, if they don't already have one, I'm really, really surprised. Or maybe one group has one and
right. I'm thinking it a place to place or business to business. I think they have other businesses that they work with or
maybe they have like 4 different tools run by 4 different departments.
It could be. So, I mean, I was surprised during my interview, I was surprised that they didn't have one, but it gave me a good talking point because I got to talk about that ServiceNow GRC and how it is a good idea to have a GRC tool implemented within the organization. And that could be something that I could spearhead in the future. So, I put myself in the place of somebody that already works there and how I can be beneficial to the company and the team.
That was it for this week on Breaking Down Security. You can find Kalila Scott on Twitter at key_twice. That's KI_TWYCE. You can find Miss Berlin and all of her projects on Twitter by going to look for her at InfoSister, INfosystir. You can also look for Hackers Health on Twitter and Infosec Roleplay, which is her workshop-based incident response gaming system based on a very famous role-playing system, if you will. Mr. Betcher can be found at BetcherPwned, BoettCherPwned, and he's the lone developer of LogMD, which is a Windows logging and forensics tool. So you can go and check that out at log-md.com. I can be found at Brian Brake, BRYANBRAKE on Twitter, and our official BrakeSec podcast Twitter handle is at BrakeSec, BRAKESEC. You can find this in 300 plus hours of CPEs. If you're a CISSP, each hour of podcast is an hour of CPE by going to breakingsecurity.com, BRAKEING security.com. And we'd appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star review on Apple, iTunes, or whatever your favorite podcast platform is. That will help us get more exposure. So thank you to our Patreon supporters for their help. Every month, some people put money in to help offset costs for our Zoom, domain hosting fees, Libsyn, Zoom for recording, etc. And they do us a great service by helping out with the logistical efforts there. So we appreciate their business. So that was it for Breaking Down Security this week. We'll be here with part 2 next week with Kalila Scott. And hope you have a great week. Be kind to one another. Take care of yourselves because you're the only you have. And we'll talk to you again soon.